The oldest one we have in the book is from a letter he wrote on the 22nd of May 1948, and it says, "There is no doubt that the Communist Party is behind the movement, but true to form and tradition, they have decided to disguise its true nature and composition in order to deceive the public." The most recent quote was from January 2011, when Mr. Mandela was in hospital, and he said, "I'm not sick, I'm old."
This is Sam Venter quoting Nelson Mandela. Venter is a senior researcher at Mandela's Foundation in Johannesburg. She's also the co-editor of his latest book. The collection of over 2,000 quotes is comprehensive, but it's not exhaustive. The quotes come from the vast Mandela archive. It includes private correspondence, speeches and audiovisual recordings, such as this interview with Brian Woodlake and ITN in Johannesburg on the 31st of May 1961.
There are many people who feel that it is useless and futile for us to continue talking peace and non-violence against a government whose reply is only savage attacks on an unarmed and defenseless people.
But the quote that shot Nelson Mandela to international fame and effectively silenced him for 27 years comes from his famous 1964 Rivonia trial doc speech.
"I have cherished the idea of a democratic and free society in which all persons will live together in harmony and with equal opportunities. It is an idea for which I hope to live for and to see realized. But my Lord, if it needs be, it is an ideal for which I am prepared to die."
Sello Hatang is the spokesperson for Mandela's Foundation and co-editor of his latest book. This is one of Hatang's favorite Mandela quotes.
"It is never my custom to use words lightly. If 27 years in prison have done anything to us, it was to use the silence of solitude to make us understand how precious words are and how real speech is in its impact on the way people live and die." For me, it's a lesson in how we sometimes take words for granted. So it teaches me to listen before I speak, which is something I don't do often enough.
Hatang says finding Mandela's most inspiring and historically important words have made him more appreciative of the human being.
There's a person in there, he's normal, he's just like you and me. He says, "In town, I take skimmed milk, but in the Transkei, there's no skimmed milk. Milk is milk."
Hatang and Venter jokingly say they wanted to call the latest Mandela book Milk is Milk, but they were overruled. Madiba's eldest granddaughter, Ndileka, throws more light on his less-known side.
I grew up with my grandmother, Evelyn, who was very religious, and to talk about sex as an unmarried woman was just taboo. When I first visited him in Robben Island, the first thing he asked me was, "When was your pap smear?" It was just a shock to the system. He's talking about, do I have a boyfriend? Am I having protected sex? And I'm thinking, wow, he was ahead of his times. As patriarchal and as traditional as he is, he could talk to me about sexual matters.
Cheryl Carolus is SAA's chairperson and the former ANC Deputy Secretary General. Carolus says the authorised book of Mandela's quotations is long overdue. South Africa's frontline generation, she says, needs his wisdom and inspiration more than ever before, especially now that some people are slightly nervous or outright hysterical about the current political climate. Carolus doesn't say to whom or what she's referring, but the mind immediately latches on to ANC Youth League President Julius Malema and his recent threats of expropriation and nationalisation.
If we were not as far developed down the road of democracy, these things would never have jumped out at us. We need to decide where we take history. And the challenge that faces us now is that the next phase of our history will be written by us. And it's a scary thought.
Carolus also has a message for the likes of Malema. He selectively quoted Nelson Mandela's 1990 views on nationalisation, but he neglected to highlight Mandela's great U-turn in favour of foreign investment 2 years later, following the World Economic Forum in Switzerland.
While our father and our icon is alive, it's actually great to just have him to just do a check-in, but maybe it's great to have a reference where we can go straight to the source in a very reliable way and not misquote him or not misunderstand him. And then if we really need to, we can go knock on his door and ask for his wisdom.
Cheryl Carolus says Nelson Mandela symbolizes the best of humankind and deserves his iconic status. He's both a hero and human being of note. He always led from the front, and he always surrounded himself by people who challenged him, his intellectual boundaries and his value system. I'm Angie Kaplianis in Johannesburg.